Hi, this is Gecko Mayhem. It's been a while since I made a video. A lot of my videos in the past have been gameplay, game challenges, things like that. But now I am going down a slightly different track. I have decided that I am going to learn about game development and game design. And my understanding of the difference between the two is that game development involves a lot of sort of getting down to the basics of building a game in terms of coding and game engines and the technical side of making a game, understanding how audio comes together and how you build assets and build the game engine stuff and all the technical side of things. So I had a search around in terms of game development and game design. I'd like to be a game designer, potentially. Who knows? The journey has just started. I decided on Unity, which is one of the big three game engines. I believe that Unreal Engine 5.1, whatever it's up to now, Unity, and I think it's called Godot, G-O-D-O-T, Godot is an open source one. So these are the three engines that I could have chosen from, and I settled on Unity. I'm not 100% sure why. I wanted to give a game engine a crack. I wanted to learn about it. Learning new software is always extremely interesting, and here at the very beginning of my gaming journey, I didn't know what to do, where to go. I've done a little bit of research, I've watched some videos, I've been encouraged by what people have been able to produce, independent game development studios and the like. I'm starting this all on my own. I don't know if I will establish a game studio. I don't know if I'll get past the basics of learning how to use Unity and code in C# and getting a lot more technical. But here I am, and I'd like to showcase what I've learned so far. So for the last about 2 weeks, which is about the length of time of my journey thus far, the last 2 weeks I have been learning Unity and going through what's called the Unity Essentials project, and that is learning the basics of Unity as a game engine. I'm going to switch off my video now so that I can concentrate a lot on what I'm showcasing and going through, and hopefully this won't turn out to be a super long video. So here we have Unity. This is the Unity Essentials training stuff. The tutorials that you step through lead you through a lot of things. The first project that you work on is this playground navigation scene. Now, just very briefly, Unity is broken up into 4 parts. You've got your scene that you're working on. You can look at the game as it's played in the same window. You've got all your stuff down here, the project assets. So this is your whole assets area for the project stuff. Then you've got your hierarchy, which is every item in the particular scene that you've pulled into your game project. And then you've got your inspector off to the right here, which shows all sorts of information about whatever asset or game object or whatever you're actually working on. And that's where you do all your scripting and things like that. So here we are with the playground scene, which was the first one that I worked on. I say worked on, but this was a scene that exists, and you go into it and it teaches you how to navigate. So for example, there was a rings thing. If I just turn on the rings, you see all these rings that appeared. There was this rings thing, and what it got you to do is to check out movement within Unity and how you can move, and you can move up and down, and you can just turn your mouse and move around. And it taught you how to focus on an object and then navigate around to find things. So for example, behind the swing set there was a number. It was the number 2. And then there were other things. So you would find an asset. For example, I would look at the fire pit, and then I would focus on it, and I could look underneath the fire pit, I could spin around, etc. So it was teaching you how to navigate. And this one was really cool because it doesn't quite look like a number here. It sort of does. You see this number 4 here? If you change this to isometric view, you can actually line it up almost perfectly. It's like it's switching to 2D, and it shows you that there's a number 4 there. So it taught you how to change the perspective, how to activate things that you could and couldn't see, turn off the rings. I worked on moving objects within the environment. So it taught you how to put things in and shift them around, rotate them, resize them, all of that stuff. So these were the two, I think they're called tangrams, the 2 tangram murals that I worked on. So the first one that wanted you to do was the turtle, and then I chose another one which was the cat, and moved all these things around. It's very basic, right? It's very simple, but it teaches you how to line things up, how to shift things around in 3D space. So that was the start, was the playground scene. And after that, I'll save the changes because I turned on the mural, was this bedroom scene. It was a blank slate. So the bedroom scene was a blank slate, and it got you to put I'm going to zoom in actually. It got you to put a few items into the thing, so you sort of decorated it. And then the main point of this tutorial was about making a bouncy ball, which I had to make, bounce off a ramp and hit some blocks. So I had to build the blocks from scratch, some 3D blocks. And if I just go to the blocks, where are we? Block towers. So if I just go to one of the block towers and zoom out a bit. This was the block structure that I built just randomly. I had to make it so that the ball would bounce off the ramp and hit these blocks, and learned about things like collision. So for example, for the ramp, if I look at the inspector, there's a whole lot of stuff on here. So you learn things like this thing called a mesh renderer, which gives it the visual properties, and then this thing called a mesh collider, which allows it to become solid and act in a physical way. So with game objects in any game environment, it's giving things collision, basically, which allows one physical object to interact with another physical object. So I learned about that. I learned how to make the ball drop using gravity. So I gave it some mass so that it wasn't just super light. So this is the equivalent of 5 kilos here. So I gave it some mass, I gave it a little bit of drag, and it drops like a ball. And so if I play it, I positioned the camera in a particular way as well. So I learned about how to move a camera and programmed it so that when you play, the blocks are standing there, they're physical objects, the ball bounces and hits them and knocks them over. It's completely silent, it's just physical. And then you have to stop the game and go back to your scene and do all the stuff that you would do on your scene with the blocks. So that was project number 2, was basically learning about colliders and rigid bodies, which allow you to give things physical properties and allow them to interact in a way. So that was project number 2. The third one was learning about audio. And so I learned all about, I'm going to zoom out so that I can actually see, all about audio sources and how you can give things, attach audio to things, including background music, which you can turn on and off in a scene, giving objects attached audio so that within a 3D environment, as you get closer to them, it sounds louder. And I attached a few bird chirping audios around the outside that window over there, outside over here, and I even gave the fridge a bit of a hum sound. So it was really learning all about audio, putting sounds in, and things like that. So it still took a bit of time to do, to actually learn and understand, because the pot I popped in, and then actually the audio sound of the pot's probably a bit too big for that. That might be a bit better if I save that. And then all these adjustments for audio for that, the bubbling water sound existed. A lot of these assets existed for the sake of learning. So that was all the audio stuff. And if I go into it, you can actually navigate it. So the first thing you probably notice is the background music. I had to turn it right down because it was way too loud. In fact, a lot of the sounds were much too loud, and I had to turn them down. You will also probably hear the underlying hum of the refrigerator, and possibly the boiling pot from here. I can hear it when I listen. Now, the boiling pot and the fridge have the audio attached in 3D, so if I go closer, the boiling pot sound gets louder. You can hear it from the right. You can hear it from the left. And the fridge hum also gets louder. Hear it in the left more. Hear it in the right more. You'll also hear the birds chirping at random intervals. I set each of the birds' sounds to randomly play at different intervals using a script. And with things like the boiling pot, to make it spatial, or left and right, closer, further away, etc. For the pot, I set the spatial blend to 3D, which gives the sound a 3D property. Same with the fridge. So the refrigerator's hum is also slid across to 3D there. So that allows you to have 3D sound where it's left and right according to where you're facing, and as you get further away the sound diminishes. Of course that fridge hum is very loud, and you can still hear the pot boiling here, and it gets louder as you move closer. Those birds are quite loud too. But yeah, that's setting up the audio. Right, so that was part 3. The fourth one was actually starting to get into programming. So this was my introduction to C#. And I will just go to the row. Zoom in a bit. My introduction to C# and the basics of programming scripts. Now this whole tutorial system, this bunch of projects, this portfolio as you will, gave a lot of assets that you could choose from, pre-built assets. Pre-built rooms in some cases, pre-built assets, but there was some scripting. So for example, I chose a car, I chose coins to be the objects that just get placed all around the place. And I'll just shift that a bit. I chose where to place them, and I scripted them in such a way, these coins, that when you pick them up with the car, the script tells the coins to disappear. It's called destroying objects, and it uses a visual effect that I could choose as part of that script to play the visual effect when you pick up a coin. So the gameplay looks like this, where it's the view from behind the car, and I pick up the coins, and every one that I pick up disappears in a little puff of dust. I also programmed the car to be able to jump. Now the interesting thing about the tutorial was that it was a basic jump. Press spacebar, you jump. You choose your height, you choose your... I think it was just height in terms of jumping. But what it didn't do is it didn't prevent you from just spamming your spacebar, and your car could technically fly, because you'd jump and then you jump and then you jump, and I didn't like it. And so what I did is I worked out, how can I make it so that there's a delay between your ability to jump? And I did it. I can spam spacebar and it just jumps once, and it doesn't jump until it hits the ground. It does cause issues if you spam it. But there is a delay. And one of the things I learned about programming was that you have these scripts. The player controller is the script that I worked on to allow me to control the car. They gave you a lot of pre-built scripts, but with the jump mechanism, I did work out, as I said, how to put a delay in the jump. And so you see this, you might see this thing down here that says jump delay, and I worked out that around 0.6 was enough of a delay so that you couldn't just spam jump. And so I added this field, jump delay. I'd like to jump to the code very quickly because let's go with that. So the player controller has a lot of code in it, but I added this jump delay, jump timer stuff, and it took a bit to work out, and I don't understand everything. This is just like a foreign language still, but there are bits and pieces that I started to understand. And so going through this, learning to program in C#, learning how it interacts with Unity. So for example, this variable here, jump force, it's a floating integer, which means it can have, I think, up to 8 decimal points. I think might be 16. I think it's 8. I think double is 16 decimal points and float is 8 decimal points. But yeah, when I added this variable here, jump force, in Unity, what that did is it added this field, jump delay. So rotation speed, jump force, jump delay. It adds these fields when you add those public variables in your script, which clicked with me. It made sense. And so building a little interactive environment with a player who is a car and coins that puff and disappear, I thought was pretty cool to learn all about that. So after all of this 3D stuff of a ball bouncing, of a pot bubbling, and of moving a player character around in a room collecting stuff, there was the 2D scene, which is currently showing in 3D, which is cool because in 3D you can, even with a 2D scene, you can look at it in 3D and it's kind of cool to see, to be honest. But in 2D, this is what it looked like. And so I did not build any of these assets, but I learned things from working in 2D. I made the walls, I gave them collision so that the little Roomba can't just drop off the edge and disappear off the screen. So when you play the game, you're this vacuum cleaner and you're collecting stars. Now I made the stars spin with code. I got these sprites of these pets and I split or cut the sprites so that they are, I think, 6 to 8 frames. I think they're 8 frames of just repeating the same frames, but it gives them animation. I gave everything collision. I gave them weight, so the couch is way more than the chairs and the plant and the cat and the dog. And I had a pre-built code for identifying how many collectibles were in the scene, and every time you picked one up, it would tell you how many were remaining. So that was not code that I wrote. It was quite an extensive piece of code that I pulled in, but everything else I worked out, worked through the tutorial, and you see the stars disappear in a little puff of dust, and the counter goes down every time I pick one up, and everything has collision and is interactable, including the pets, which you can move as if they are objects and they don't get hurt. So everything in the room is maneuverable using the player character, which is a little vacuum cleaner. And you shift stuff around to try and figure out, oh, where are all the stars? So this was actually really handy learning to work in 2D and learning a little bit more about C#, about scripting in Unity. After I had completed all of these projects, I then had to put them all together. And to put them all together, I had to pull in whichever scene I chose. I chose the bedroom one because I thought it was pretty fitting. I recreated it slightly different. Basketball hoop's still there, horses there. That wasn't there in the original bedroom scene that I built. So this is basically a navigation scene for choosing any of the projects that I worked on as part of this learning experience. So I popped in these buttons, and a lot of it was pre-built. A lot of this was pre-built. I didn't learn a heck of a lot from this, but I had to learn how to make the buttons actually pull in other scenes. So to connect all of these scenes that I had worked on with these buttons. And that was basically this exercise. And if you go to it and you play this, the buttons are clickable. And it will take you to the scene that you worked on. So this one here was not interactable. And if I press escape, I'll pop back out. And I can choose any of them, still running the engine, running the game. The final act, I guess, the final piece of learning that I underwent with this beginning stage of Unity and C# was I chose to connect the 3 rooms together. You'll notice a few things off the bat. So the background music is playing through the whole scene, all 3 rooms connected together. Birds are still chirping. You might have noticed that the ball made a bounce sound. I'll actually replay that. So the ball makes a bounce sound when it hits the ramp, and I scripted it to do that. There are no block sounds, however, and the car starts here in the bedroom instead of in the living room. I've scattered coins throughout the entire bedroom now. So there are now coins in this room. I scripted it so that when I approach the door, it opens. There was already a built-in animation that I could connect the script to. I've rearranged the coins in here, so it's not quite as cluttered, not quite as many coins in here. I can hear the fridge hum from here, which is crazy. Not sure if I can hear the pot boiling, and this door is also the same. You can hear the pot boiling as I go up to it, and very loud fridge hum. But yeah, that was all 3 rooms connected. I had to delete a little bit of the walls to make sure the doors opened actually into the rooms. And the car still works, the car goes everywhere. And the last thing I did was I added the remaining collectibles thing that I used in the 2D scene that I made. And I just added it here. Not quite a copy-paste, but almost a copy-paste of that little script there to show the remaining collectibles. Yeah, so that was all 3 rooms connected. I've completed my project. I don't know much about Unity. I know how to navigate it. I know how to pull a script onto a game object. I know how to write very basic scripts. I know how to look up how to add to a script, how to write a script to do something, which is how I worked out the ball bouncing thing, and how I will work out the block clunking sound when anything hits the blocks. But yeah, for now, I think that about does it. That is something that I would call successful in terms of the start, the very start of my game development journey, and potentially moving into game design, which is something that I've wanted to do for a very long time and just haven't put aside the time to get started. And it's overwhelming. There is so much to learn. I need to learn how to make my own assets. Maybe find some free audio, work together with people to expand on what I currently know, obviously. That about sums it up, though. It's been a good 2 weeks of learning Unity, of trial and error in some cases, and I think that I've made some progress. And I'll continue to make progress, and I don't know what the next step is. I don't know what I need to learn next, but I think if I document it in some sort of developer journal, is that what this is? Maybe. Yeah, maybe it is. A devlog, developer's video log, potentially. It's basic, it's simple. I didn't build most of the assets in this learning experience, but I did learn a lot. It feels like I learned a lot. I've got a lot to learn in terms of especially C#, and all the nitty gritty of Unity, but that's it. That's where I'm at right now. And next time I make a video, next time I showcase what I'm doing, it'll be an improvement on what I've learned to date. I'll put in more time to build new things and learn new things and figure out how to put it together.